But just to set the scene, obviously, a number of you know that we've been working on the idea of a diversity project apprenticeship scheme that fills the gaps that member firms have identified. Obviously, we've been talking at various consultations with you that there's an appetite for a programme, first and foremost, which utilises the apprenticeship levy, which many of you are not being able to utilise at present. And also, we've heard a particular desire to provide a pathway into front office roles and also to target school leavers. There's quite a lot already available for graduates, but clearly one of the likely to continue developments and trends is that some people are deciding not to go to university who might be extremely able, but it's not an economic option for them, or they just decide it's not going to be something that they can afford, perhaps with no better benefit as they see it to their career. So we really heard very clearly that that's the sweet spot for people in terms of what programme we'd like to see. And of course, the Diversity Project has got experience, particularly through the Pathway programme that some of you are familiar with, in bringing a group of people together. So the idea is that as well as helping member firms with launching their own apprenticeship schemes, that we would also develop a cohort of apprentices who would be able to train together and gain exposure to experts in the industry across multiple firms. So come together during the course of the apprenticeship and have additional learnings together as a group, and obviously in so doing develop a network amongst themselves. So this session, the idea now, we're at that stage where you're going to hear a pretty comprehensive overview of the apprenticeship programme as it's currently envisaged, and an opportunity to hear from Fitch Learning, who are experts, as many of you are aware, in delivering financial education, and who we envisage partnering with on this programme. Jess, was there anything else you wanted me to say at the beginning before handing over to you?
No, that's perfect. That's a perfect segue into the session.
And forgive me if I've been sort of squatting in various offices in the city. I may not have this room for the full hour, so if I do drop off, it's because I've lost the room. So not that I'm not interested. So I will stay on as long as I can. But again, it's great to have. I think we're a full set. We had 16 people sign up, and we're 16 people, which has got to be a first. Thank you. Over to you, Jess.
Thank you so much, Helena. And so what you can expect from us today is we'll start with, like, it's Helena's done introduction. So we'll have the DP do an overview of the programme as we envisage it. And then after that, we will hand over to Fitch Learning. So Rob and John, if you'd like to introduce yourself now, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely, Jess, and thank you for the introduction as well, Helena. So great to meet you all. I've met some of you before, which is great, but for those of you who haven't, my name is Rob Takua. I head up the learning solutions that we design and deliver for our clients at Fitch Learning. And in terms of our expertise, as Helena said, we are specialists in financial services education, that all of our clients work in the financial markets. Early careers training, we've been delivering for over 25 years now, a whole range, school leaver, intern, graduate programs, but most importantly, since 2017, we set up a specialist apprenticeships division, very much to help employers take advantage of the levy that's there, and importantly, to develop learners. And the whole essence when we set up our apprenticeships learning is to attract a more diverse talent pool. That was the whole essence behind it. So it's been fantastic to partner with the Diversity Project to ensure that we are meeting that strategic aim that we had all those many years ago. I'll just hand over to John for intros as well.
Great, thank you, Rob. Yeah, hi everyone. Good to see some familiar names and some new ones as well. So it's good to meet you all. I'm John McDermott. I'm the Client Relationship Director here at Fitch Learning, specifically focused on apprenticeships. Been in the business a few years, but kind of been in and around apprenticeships the last 12 or 13 years. And my role at Fitch is working with organisations on similar initiatives to this, working around that hand-holding piece around implementing apprenticeships. But yeah, great to connect and good to meet you all. Back to you, Jess.
Thank you so much for that. And so after we've gone through the program as a whole, there is an opportunity to ask questions. We know a lot of you have questions for us, which we're more than happy to answer in order to support your apprenticeship journey. We'll talk a bit about the next steps and any other business for today. I'm Jessica Austin, by the way, Next Generation Talent Program Manager. I've met a few of you on calls before, but some of you I haven't met, and I'm delighted to take you through what we have in store for the program. So we heard a bit about this earlier about why we're looking at apprenticeships now. And so there's been a lot of talk about previously there being the standard to go to university after you finish your A levels. We've heard quite recently in the news that actually the government are looking to move that towards not just A levels, not just going to university, but also maybe looking at some of these higher standard apprenticeships. So this is an amazing time for us to head into the space, particularly as there is an appetite for it amongst the young people that we serve in our communities. And so we've looked into a level apprenticeship and we've decided that this is where we're going to go. It's equivalent to the first year at university, which means that actually it's a fantastic stepping stone for young individuals who wish to enter the investment and savings industry, but they may have no clue about it. So it's quite good for the apprentices to do a 21-month program, which actually gives them an introduction into the field, and they're able to do this and then decide, actually, maybe I want to then go and do a level 6 apprenticeship after. Actually, maybe there's a route in for me into the front office through this apprenticeship. And so that's exactly what we're trying to focus on, a pathway into the front office for our young people. The other thing that we heard about earlier is the fact that there is this levy that we all know that firms are not really utilising at the moment. And so this apprenticeship is actually a fantastic way to make sure that firms are using their levy, but also engaging in a way to make the investment and savings industry more diverse. So we're well aware of the research that goes into speaking about from McKinsey. They have a diversity matters report talking about actually those companies who are committed to diversity show a 39% increased likelihood of outperformance for those in the top quartile of ethnic representation versus the bottom quartile. Now, we know that diversity is not just limited to ethnicity. There are other ways in which we can think about diversity, and that's particularly important for us on this program, ensuring that we're targeting a range of groups of individuals coming into the investment and savings industry. So we'll cover a bit more a bit later on about how we're going to do that. The other thing that I think is important to note is that if you're a firm who haven't actually used your levy before, this program is going to support you in using that levy. We heard earlier just now from Fitch Learning that they have expertise in hand-holding our firms through actually using their levy and paying their levy and making sure that's used in order to support the training of the young person who would enter your firm. So that's a bit about why apprenticeships are so important for us. Now, I'll take you through a bit more of our apprenticeship and why it's unique for us and why I've decided to go through it in this way. So as we mentioned before, we're aiming for a cohort of apprentices. We're aiming for 40 to 50 across all of our member firms. The numbers will vary depending on the size of the member firm, of course, and the need and the scope for those apprentices in each member firm as well. Most of them will be in London, but we understand that we have some firms with offices in other parts of England, which we welcome, given that the member firm understands that there may be a few costs associated with the apprentices travelling to London. Now, we're also open to the idea of some of those training sessions being virtual, some of those pathway sessions being virtual. Is something that we work together with our member firms and with Fitch Learning to ensure that we get the right structure of the programme so that our young individuals can successfully network together but can still engage in the programme. Let's say your firm you'll have offices in other parts of the UK. I mentioned before that the programme aims to provide a pathway into the front office. So whilst when we think about some of those roles and where they may sit in your different teams, it might feel like some of the skills that the apprentices have to gain are quite report-based, they're systems-based, it might seem a bit operational. But the idea is that the apprentice is learning the skills required to move them into a front office role, following further study or following them gaining a role in your firm if you have them after their apprenticeship. But the idea really is that the level 4 is a good foundation into completing maybe the level 6 and completing further study. The certificate that we're using is the investment management certificate. Now, this is quite a useful certificate to use because it means that actually this is a good foundation for the young people. Say they wanted to go and study further, maybe look at the CFA in the future. Now, government guidelines will be finalised officially in March. We're quite confident with the programme that we're going through. However, this does mean that we won't actually start to advertise and launch the programme until those government guidelines in March. Now, with apprenticeships, they're usually recruited on a rolling basis. So we still have the right time in order to recruit the apprentices and get them into your firms. In the meantime, we can still attend those recruitment careers fairs as DP and raise awareness of the programme before it actually launches. So I'm going to hand over to Fitch Learning to talk a bit more about what they're going to do in terms of the actual apprenticeship journey, thinking about the technical skills that the apprentices are going to gain on the programme.
Thank you, Jess. Just before we launch in, I am conscious quite a few of you are well versed in apprenticeships. I recognise quite a few of the faces and names there. So do you mind, could you just, you could do, yeah, let's use the virtual hand in the reactions at the bottom. Could you just raise your virtual hand if that's all right? Just to let me know if you are already feel pretty comfortable with apprenticeships, you're already delivering them, you're more interested in the diversity project initiative rather than apprenticeships, you know, you're already well versed. So if you won't mind, just virtual hand up. Thank you, Lorna, or thumbs up, whatever you prefer, that you feel pretty comfortable. You're delivering apprenticeships all right. Thank you, Leslie. You're doing them already for many years. Georgina, of course. Hello, Georgina. Yes, thank you. Valentina, thank you very much. Great. Okay. And can I just ask, okay, brilliant. I was just, Becky, you've read my mind. Can you just do the virtual handout or thumbs up to show me you haven't yet done any apprenticeships historically for various reasons. But yeah, it'd be good the other way around. So thank you, Becky, Faye, Liz. See if we get anyone else. Okay, so as we expected, we're going to have quite a few of you that can share that best practice as we do. You know, we've been doing this for many years. We've have a lot of lessons learned, let's put it that way, in terms of what works and what doesn't work. And we definitely have that incorporated going forwards. And then we will cover off, especially for those of you who haven't done apprenticeships before, what or how it's structured and pitfalls to avoid. Thank you, Ed. But also apprenticeships are changing. Again, some of you will be aware the government regulations are changing, how apprenticeships are being structured. The apprenticeship standard that we're going to go through here is changing as well, which is what Jess was referencing. So we'll reference the changes to apprenticeships going into next year as well. Okay, so I will, given the audience, I will go through the key foundations, what makes a successful apprenticeship. And firstly, the pitfall to avoid is to think it's about passing a professional qualification. It is not. And I want to make that really clear from the outset that for a successful apprenticeship program, it's to view it, as it says at the top there, a personal professional development plan. What it does, it gives you a structured learning journey, which is ideal for school leavers and new entrants to structure their learning in terms of what they learn in their role, and then to demonstrate that and to validate and to accredit that. And too many organizations have lost sight of that, focusing on passing IMC or CFA, which really isn't what apprenticeships are designed for and hasn't been successful. So I do want to ensure that everyone's clear that to have a successful apprenticeship program, especially with this partnership with the Diversity Project, the focus needs to be about bringing in diverse talent, school leavers, and to give them that support, particularly understanding they're not graduates. This is their first time working in an office environment. How can we support them to be successful in their role and then to progress into other career development and other programs going forwards? The key components you can see outlined there. And I should have said right at the beginning, please do ask questions as we go through. You can come off mute. So I'm very happy to take questions as we go through it. You can put them in the chat as well. I can see those popping up, whichever you prefer. Very happy to answer questions as we go through it. And John McDermott, who's with us, he's our Apprenticeships Director. I'll be handing to John to run through. And John, please do interject if there's anything important that we need to make sure we get across. So you'll see from left to right there, key important point is that it's not just for the learners coming in, the line managers need to be really fully versed on how this is different from, say, recruiting a graduate. You know, if we're looking at school leavers, we need to think about this might be the first time that they're having a proper job in the office. They haven't had those years of experience, let's say, in a university environment. They may never have been away from home. So all of that pastoral care is so much more important for school leavers than you might think for your typical university graduate. So we put a lot of focus on ensuring line managers are fully understand the program, what is the commitment from them to ensure that it's a successful outcome for the learner. You'll also note there the average commitment time. This is important. It is government regulated, so this does need to be tracked. And on average, there's 6 hours, what we call a learning commitment. You might have heard of the off-the-job learning hours is the official title. Is a bit misleading, I would say, because it's actually what any new skills they develop on the role that can contribute to new knowledge, skills, and behaviors. So it's not necessarily going on a course. It could be having a briefing meeting, understanding a new product or solution that you're offering. All of that new knowledge, skills, and new behaviors that are learned is all going towards that learning commitment. But it does need to be documented. You can see on the next up there, evidence of Matas Hub. That's the platform, e-track as it's also known, that will track and log how the learners is performing and how are they developing through the program. Think of it like a CPD log of all the knowledge and all the events, all the useful training, and also what they've learned within their role to develop them in their future careers at your organization. Now, there is a professional qualification in there, and this one is the investment management certificate, obviously investment focus. Many of you will be very familiar with IMC. So I'm going to intentionally be light touch on the qualification because actually success with apprenticeship programs is everything else around that that is super important. And one point there at the bottom there is that skills coach. The skills coach is the mentor that will support the learner, work in conjunction with the line manager to make sure the learner is supported and kept on track and can get that opportunity to develop their skills. As I said, this all needs to be tracked. This all needs to be logged because it will be demonstrated externally to an endpoint assessment organization. So there is what's called built a portfolio of evidence, which is essentially what have they learned over the last 21 months of the program. There's a meeting essentially to discuss, well, how did you find that? And that's with the endpoint assessor. What did you learn over the time of the program? Just checking with, Georgina, I hope everyone's seen that in terms of that guidance. Thank you, Georgina, having caught up with the experience. This week, this track specific people management. I found it useful to understand the guidance of circa 50 hours per year. Yeah, thank you. So there is quite a bit of commitment and it does need to be logged and tracked on there. So typically working out to be on average 6 hours of a learning commitment. Thank you, Georgina, for putting that in there. And please keep sharing what you find works as well if you've had previous experience. I will pause there and just check, and feel free to come off mute or into the chat any questions that you have at this stage.
Rob, I've got a question,
Hello.
but I might be thanks. I might be jumping the gun. Sorry, you might be about to come onto this. I can see that you've got IMC there. Is it just IMC specific, or would there be an option for IAD as part of the program?
No, very good question.
Or am I asking for too much?
No, you're not asking for too much at all. So some things to update you on. I'm really sorry, I can't see on the screen who that came from. Who's
Lorna.
that? Oh, Lorna, there you are. Thank you. Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Lorna. Hello.
Hiya.
Yeah, right. So the current apprenticeship standard is under revision. So currently there are, as you're probably aware, 3 different qualifications that you can do. 3 main ones anyway. There's the IMC, which obviously for investments is a good fit. There's the investment operations certificate, which also is a pretty good fit in relation to investments. And then, as you mentioned, there is also the investment advice diploma. We cover all 3. as qualifications, and we have a very flexible model for employers to to have all of the above, or one of the above, I should say, for their learners. All I would say, though, with this partnership with the Diversity Project, we want to view them as a cohort. So our partnership with the Diversity Project, we want them to all be going through the same learning journey, working with each other. And because we're really targeting here those going into front office in an investments role, then the IMC fits best. So it's maybe one to discuss later on, but I hope you understand sort of
Yeah,
the
makes sense.
situation.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Lorna. And then I did mention it's currently, this standard is under review. So there are trailblazers that go on. Some of you, I'm sure, will be involved. We are involved in all the trailblazer meetings, giving our guidance as a training provider. And the qualifications may change in the future, but the general consensus by the employers is that they want the qualifications to keep in there, and for IMC, IAD, and IOC to remain in there. But just so everyone's aware, it's currently being reviewed, but that's the employer definitely consensus at this current time for the new standard that will come out next year. Okay, all right. Thank you for the question, Lorna. Great. Okay, I will move on, Jess, if you won't mind. So we'll go through in terms of how is the program structured. So it is a 21-month program, and I'll give you the key components here. The first component, super important, which is the onboarding, in particular eligibility. So it's really important to ensure that the learner will be given the exposure to the learning outcomes that are structured into the apprenticeship standard. I will say the apprenticeship standard is a government-approved apprenticeship structure. So we have some flexibility within there, but we must meet all the learning outcomes that are outlined in the learning outcomes under knowledge, skills, and behaviours in the government-approved apprenticeship standard. The apprenticeship standard is designed by employers like yourself, so it is very relevant, but we have to ensure that the learner meets that to be successful and then pass the endpoint assessment that's there on the right-hand side. So that is really important to work with yourselves and go, right, is this learner going to be in a suitable role that they will get exposure to all of those learning outcomes over the next 21 months, or to be more precise, over the next 18 months of the learner journey. So that's really important. As we mentioned, really important that we brief the line managers before you even think about starting on apprenticeships, that business buy-in, understanding how it differs, what you can and what you cannot do within an apprenticeships framework and structure is really important for line managers to be briefed on. We very much have worked with the diversity projects in terms of the launch. Networking opportunities is important. We do want to make this accessible across the country, so we are really thinking about in-person events and virtual events as well, to ensure that we do think about those situated in offices all around the country. Dean, what roles would you see as suitable to align with this program? What we'll do is we'll share, it's part of the FAQs that we're sharing, is exactly that, Dean, in terms of what the typical types of job roles are. It's essentially those who are working in investments. It's those who will get exposure to investment related activities. But in relation to being more specific on that, it's in our FAQs that we'll share after the meeting. John, I don't know if there's anything else you'd share at this stage in terms of sort of suitability, role suitability.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'd always look at it on a case-by-case basis on supporting employers, but we've got the new standard, the occupational brief, that kind of highlights the key duties of what the new standard will be. So that's been agreed and kind of formalized, due to launch in March 2026 is the kind of expected launch date. And off the back of that, you can kind of, they're deliberately left fairly vague, the duties, because they can then be adapted and made more relevant to different front office roles. So we can absolutely share that occupational brief and an idea around what those job profiles would need to look like. The knowledge, the skills and the behaviours that we also referenced of what kind of forms the apprenticeship are still to be determined and confirmed, but they'll be offshoots from the agreed duties. So we can absolutely share those with you, so you can make sure that when you are looking at roles or looking to create roles potentially that it aligns to those duties.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Sounds good,
Yeah,
thank
so
you.
we'll. Yeah, thanks, Dean, for the question. Yeah, we'll share more detail on that. As John said, it's intentionally broad to try and capture different types of roles. So that's good news in terms of eligibility. But we'll share more info after the meeting. And then learn journey, structured. You can see the key phases there on what they'll learn on there. We'll have structured master classes. We've got in-person, virtual, skills coach supporting them. We'll catch up with them on a monthly basis, and then every quarter with the line manager and the learner, just to make sure they're being fully supported and on track for success. And then the last 3 months is the endpoint assessment. Again, some of you be aware that is changing in terms of structure. Again, all to be confirmed and approved, but the plan is that the endpoint assessment can be done more flexibly. So it's not all left at the end. You can do assessment components during the program. Not all with the external assessment organization, the training organization can get involved as well. So it's going to be more flexible, but it's still the same principle. You need to demonstrate externally to an industry-wide benchmark that the learner has. The learner needs to demonstrate that they've learned the knowledge, skills, and behaviors, learning outcomes to a proficient level to be able to succeed and be successful. And that is all driven by the learning outcomes. Again, I'll pause there just to check if there's any other questions before we move on.
Sorry, Rob, I know it's Helena here. I know
Hi, Helena.
you kind of have answered it, but I just want to reiterate, because I think that some of our firms are thinking they've got to come up with very detailed job descriptions of what these roles are. But from your last answer, then what I'm hearing is that it's okay. In fact, it's almost deliberately encouraged to have quite broad-based roles advertised. And then obviously you've got to make sure at the end they kind of meet the criteria, but that you don't have to come up, because it feels to me a bit chicken and egg that you,
Yeah.
Otherwise you're going to box people in. They won't even at 18 know what all the different nuances are. So I mean, the one way to get, it seems like it was a little bit of a loop that we kept getting into with some member firms that, they don't know exactly which roles, but then we say, well, actually, I think it's more like which areas and what type of thing the people would be doing. Is that right?
That's absolutely right, Helena. It's not actually the JD that drives it. The JD can be quite broad, and as long as you know what the sort of overall roles are, that's great. What really drives it is that are you confident when we share, the learning outcomes that they are going to get exposure over the next 18 to 21 months to those activities, those tasks. And then that's the key. That is the key. But you're absolutely right. From in terms of advertising the role, it could be very high level, but it's making sure that you're going to give them the opportunity to get exposure to all of those objectives and aims over the 18 to 21 months.
Thanks for confirming that. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Helena. Lorna, hello.
Hi, thank you. Sorry, just going back a little bit, you mentioned about some of the making sure that obviously it's accessible, I guess, nationwide. So for some of the firms that would want to advertise apprenticeship opportunities in, other offices, maybe in Glasgow or Edinburgh or, anywhere else, do you have much of a plan yet? And I appreciate you might not, in terms of what some of those kind of bringing the cohort together. Would in person be kind of London specific, and then everything else might be virtual, or do you anticipate being able to host in person opportunities beyond London? And I guess the reason I'm asking that is just because we're, as I'm sure many other organisations are, trying to make an effort to not be too London centric, but appreciate that's very difficult, especially if it's employers that are hosting.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So we have had lots of thought on this, and we've been discussing with Jess and Adrian, etc., as well with the diversity project. Right. A couple of things. First of all, apprenticeships. You need to have it needs to be a learner in an office in England for the levy. So Scotland's out. Scotland has its own rules and is very, very, very different to those in England. So the levy we talk about here will be eligible for learners in an office and working in an office in England, just for that. So Scotland is a different approach. The second point is, we work with with yourselves, in fact, and other organisations that'll have offices in Manchester, Liverpool, Birmingham, etc. So the apprenticeship programs we've designed is intentionally that it's accessible for wherever your office is across England. What that basically means then is that we give typically 2 options. So, for example, if we talk about IMC, there's an in-person option, which is in London, and then we'll have a separate virtual option, which is for anyone where London is not accessible, and actually for those who prefer virtual. And so our intention is to do this with the Diversity Project Programme initiative here, is to make it accessible for both, bring them together where we can. And that would typically be at the London office where there's a critical mass, but then make sure that we are offering virtual options as well to kids for those where, we're talking about young people here. It may not be feasible for them to travel to London. So we need to be very mindful of that and make sure there's a virtual alternative.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, thanks, Lorna. Okay, great. We will move on, if that's okay. If we can move to the next slide. Thank you. Oh, yes, go on.
Sorry, Rob. Can I just
Oh,
ask
hi, Katrina. Hello.
Hello, nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. Yeah.
Can I just ask a quick follow-up question on that piece around the in-person and virtual IMC study options?
Yes.
Are they typically kind of weekly or monthly? So we're thinking about having some of the apprentices in Leeds as an example, very happy to bring them down. Weekly bringing them down is obviously going to be pretty disruptive, but if it was monthly, 6 weekly, whatever, then that could be doable.
Yeah, thanks, Roger. Yeah, we've been very mindful of that. So the way we've structured it is to make it accessible if you're in Leeds or Manchester. So the way that it'll happen, you'll get a digital learning platform, which will have all the resources, tutor help desk, recordings, etc., that they'll have, and the online resources. And then they'll also get a revision course. And this is that option, with the trainer, where you could do it in person in London, or you could do it virtually. And for that reason, Georgina, we're conscious that people will be traveling from all around the country. So we've made it into blocks. So for the Unit 1 investment environment, there's a 2-day option. And then with the investment practice, there's a 3-day option, but we've made it blocked. So we're talking about 5 days where, if possible, the learner could come to London. And if not, they've got the virtual option as well.
Makes sense.
Yeah, thanks, Georgie.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, right. We've seemed to have missed or blocked up investment at the top there. Apologies for that, but this is the investment management certificate, professional qualification. Again, I'd like to touch on this because conscious many of you will be aware of this. The only thing I would say from here, we obviously have learners, non-apprentices doing this. We give more support to the apprentices. We need to make sure it ties in with the learning outcomes. The skills coach provides support. We provide additional sort of masterclass as well, virtual these are, just to make sure we support them on this challenging qualification. And we keep track as well. We've got online portal stats so we can track and see, are they keeping up to date with where they need to be at each stage. So yeah, extra support for the learners, but very much a tried and tested route to getting through this qualification. As Jess mentioned, there is another apprenticeship program that's a higher level in there, which is the level 6. Just so you're aware, the level 6 is undergoing also a change. And just so you're aware, the level 6 apprenticeships, which will be a nice stepping stone, is not having professional qualifications in there. Employers have decided that. So you'll note that the IMC is an ideal stepping stone to CFA level 1. That's absolutely true. Just be aware the level 6 apprenticeship won't have CFA in there going forward. So that was a conscious decision made by employers because of the success rates. So yes, you can still fund CFA, but that will be commercial, not through a levy funded approach. Just for you to be aware of that change coming in next year. Okay, if it's okay, I'll just check there's no other questions.
Before we move on, Rob, just to add.
Oh yeah, please do, John. Go on.
Yeah, just around passing the exams, because it is a very challenging exam to sit, especially for school leavers. As we know, we do our best to set them up and make sure it's the right timing, etc., and they get all that structured support beforehand. but there is a percentage of learners that do fail. And if learners do fail an exam, we almost provide a diagnostic of the areas that they need to improve on, and they can re-attend those revision sessions if they need it. Plus, there's also potential for one-to-one tuition sessions with faculty members as well to make sure that they do get through that second time. And we're talking about a levy inclusive program. The one thing that isn't inclusive of the levy are retakes of exams. So it's definitely worthwhile highlighting that that's payable directly to the institutes.
Yeah, good points to raise. And on that support, we do it. We also preempt as well. So those comments that John made, one-to-one support if needed, review of how they're tracking. We do that before their first attempt as well. So really important that we get them through first time. If for whatever reason they're not successful, unfortunately, it's not 100% pass rate for IMC, then as John outlined, we keep supporting them, but we do have those checks and balances in place before their first attempt as well. Great, thanks for that, John. I'll just check if there's any other questions in the chat. No, I don't believe there is. So we will move into other ways we support them from a learning perspective. Oh, Leslie, do you have your first time pass? Yeah, sure. So typically, and if I think about apprentices, our IMC pass rate is in excess of 85% first time. So we're very proud of that. The typical industry pass rate for IMC is around 70. So we get very successful pass rates. So it's good. But as John very quite rightly highlighted, it's not 100%, unfortunately. There are always some who, for various reasons, are unsuccessful in their first attempt. So we do ensure we keep supporting them. But yeah, IMC pass rates 85% and above is typical what we achieve. Okay. Right, so other training development that we have, we want to support them holistically, not just to pass a qualification. So there are a number of masterclasses as well, but in addition to that, there's also a range of other workshops you can also consider if appropriate and relevant for their role. So a number of technical skills on the left-hand side, a number of interpersonal behavioural skills on the right-hand side. On the behavioural skills, not to be underestimated, these are school leavers. What we might maybe presume is take for granted isn't necessarily the case. Could be the first time they're working in an office. Just things like they might have a school mentality. We have had apprentices where they thought they had to raise their hand to go to the toilet, for example, or how to write an email. So all of that sort of support that you might take for granted with other people joining, you need to have some, and we also have that sort of extra sort of support. The skills coach will provide extra guidance, and we have these other behavioural skills workshops will help them on those interpersonal skills. On the left-hand side, technical skills as well, but you can work with the line manager and the learner to decide which ones are relevant. If Python isn't relevant for the role, then there's no need to go on the Python workshop as an example. In terms of other networking learning events, the Diversity Project also have a number. Jess, I'll hand to you on the to go through those.
Thank you so much for that, Rob. And so, as we've mentioned, the idea is to create a cohort, and we want to have them have pathway style networking sessions. So if you're familiar with the pathway program, one of the key benefits is the networking aspects. And so we envisage workshops to these names. And as Rob was saying, these are people who have just come from school. So they do need a bit of hand-holding and a supportive environment. And that's what these pathway style sessions aim to provide, a supportive environment where the young people have access to those who are quite advanced in their career in the industry, but also maybe those who have done a similar journey to them. But the idea is that they will hear from these key people on these key themes, which will then enable them to support themselves whilst they're at your respective firms in navigating the workplace and understanding, okay, like what can I do in order to make sure that I'm adding value even as an apprentice? And there's a bit in there about industry book club. So this is just exposing the individuals to an industry specific topic that will enable them to just develop their awareness of what's going on in industry and something that they can use to work on personally in terms of their performance and how they're doing and just thinking about their futures. We really want to make sure that these young people don't just get a place in the industry, but they remain in the industry. So the aim of these sessions is to really to develop longevity in terms of them remaining in the industry, thinking about what they're going to do, what are their next steps, how are they going to impress the people when they're at your respective firms. I'll hand back over to Rob.
Wonderful, thank you, Jess. Adnan, just in your questions, if you've read our minds, a wonderful segue in terms of how can we support finding this talent? You may never have recruited school leavers before. You might have gone more the sort of graduate route. How can we help? So we, as we said, when we first decided to support apprenticeships, it was very much to help get diverse talent coming in at a younger age as well, not the graduate route necessarily. So what we set up is and this is, I should say, it is not levy funded, but it's Fitch funded. So it's completely free from your perspective, from an employer's perspective, and the individual's perspective. It's a Fitch funded accelerator program. It's a 10-week program where we get typically year 13s, but those are sort of school leaver age. And typically they're still at school when they do this. So we make it quite flexible to attend to support them. Yeah, the whole aim of this is then for the next stage to then be successful at interview stage for being an apprenticeship apprentice. So success for us is you employing them as an apprentice through the Diversity Project Initiative. That'd be fantastic. So so this has been a great talent pipeline to identify talent. We can then share with you in terms of what their skills are. They're super keen individuals. Their enthusiasm, their attitude is second to none. You'll see that. So we can certainly help to identify that talent and provide that. And Jess, it's a good time where, in terms of the Diversity Project, how your sort of support is going to be on the identification recruitment.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that. And so with the recruitment, we're finalizing the specific aspect of it, but what we can say is that the Diversity Project will absolutely be supporting with that recruitment piece. As I mentioned earlier, it's very important for the program that we have a diverse group of individuals who are entering the program. And we also have talent pool that we can use from our Next Generation Talent program. We have the Catalyst Education program, which I'm sure many of you have heard of, but these are year 12s and year 13. So exactly the people who we would want completing these apprenticeships. They would have had 1 or 2 years of this Catalyst Education program. They would have completed a level 2 CISI qualification. And these people are really interested in the industry. They have the skills clearly if they were able to pass the CISI. And so this is a talent pool that the Diversity Project would really like to draw from, enable some candidates to get onto the apprenticeship program. So I mentioned that the Diversity Project will help with the recruitment angle. So the idea is that we will make sure that we have a talent pool, so a candidate pool that we will pass on to member firms. So we will look at the initial stage of recruitment, and we're not just recruiting from these 2 angles that I mentioned, but also some of the fantastic existing work that's already out there. There are a lot of programs such as Amazing Apprenticeships, such as the Black Apprentice Network, such as even the UCAS website, and so many more out there that I haven't mentioned, who are already targeting that exceptional talent pool, who already have a good exposure to that diverse pool of candidates across the country. So we are going to be working with some of those organizations in making sure that our apprenticeship program is actually on their websites, on their social media platforms, making sure that the young people in those schools, those high performing schools, are able to see this apprenticeship program and therefore then apply to it. And so we're definitely going to be supporting and having that initial stage of the recruitment process and making sure that you have a wide talent pool to pick from to then go on and do your own recruitment processes that you would like to do. But we will do the initial stage of filtering.
Great. Thanks, Jess.
It's worth mentioning as well that some of you that are on the call would have seen some examples of some of these candidates coming through. Just to emphasize, they are absolutely more than academically capable. A lot of them are doing their A-levels and are choosing options like mathematics, economics, some of the sciences. So they're very much showing the initiative to choose the right options, not exclusively. Not all of them are, but a lot of them are, and they're getting great grades. So don't look at the program as I guess the candidates are not academically capable. They absolutely could choose to go to university if they wanted to, but they're choosing the apprenticeship as their first route, as you'll see more and more of, I think, in the news and as apprenticeships grow in popularity. A lot of candidates who have that capability to go to university are choosing the option to enter the workplace through an apprenticeship as their preferred option. for various reasons, as we know.
Yeah, fully agree, John. The commitment you see from these individuals
Mhm.
is amazing, absolutely amazing. And it just shows if they're willing to do this while they're doing their A levels, just how committed they'll be when they join an organisation. Okay, just to wrap on my side before I hand it back to Jess, just the commitment that's needed. So on the next slide, just a summary. I will say, those of you who haven't done apprenticeships before, don't underestimate it. I'm sure those who are doing apprenticeships is a big commitment, especially at the start, to get it set up, to get the business to understand it, to get all the the support structure in place. It's not to be underestimated, but once you get it set up, it's just fantastic, and it gets easier and easier once you've got it set up. And then the individuals that you will get will not let you down. They're just very bright, very committed, really want to start working. Rather than 3 years, increasing their loans, I suppose. They just want to make sure that they're earning and learning as well at the same time. Okay, Jess, I'll hand back to you in terms of next steps. That's okay.
Thank you so much for that, Rob. And so,
Oh,
I think
sorry,
we've just
Jess.
had a question come through
Yeah,
as well.
I just saw a question. Sorry, Jess. Just saw a question from
no
Becky in
worries.
terms of average time commitment by line managers. It's difficult to put a number. The bare minimum is certainly, obviously, the line manager briefing session and then the quarterly catch-ups with the learner. But it's more than that. It's more about supporting the learner throughout and not thinking they're a graduate, they're sort of self-sufficient. It's a difficult one to put a time on it, but it's more than what you would have as a graduate. John, I don't know if you can survive. I know that's a really vague answer, but it's difficult
Yeah,
to put a number on it.
I would say if we attach it specifically to the apprenticeship, it isn't overly onerous. Is probably the best way of putting it, because from a time commitment perspective, the line managers will be briefed and supported, and we'll do a lot of work with them in the upfront piece as much as they need, which is tailored to each individual line manager. They'll have an opportunity to also network with other line managers before, if they're looking at having an apprentice for the first time. But in terms of mandated time, like Rob's just touched on, the quarterly reviews, which are generally 60 minutes to 90 minutes, we'll share a timeline with you afterwards. That's the commitment time formally by the line managers. But when it comes to managing an apprentice, it's that hand holding, it's that hand-to-hand combat that the line managers will need to have with their learners to kind of coach them through, which would naturally happen anyway, which is not necessarily directed at the apprenticeship. It's more coaching somebody and mentoring somebody as an A-level leaver sort of level. So it's more time commitment than a graduate in that initial phase, but not really too much time specifically to the apprenticeship, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks, John. Georgina.
I was just going to build on that.
Yeah.
I popped a note in the chat that I happened to have a conversation with quite an experienced apprentice manager this week, and we code our time. So it was they're able to sort of do a bit of analysis, which I actually found really useful. And they suggested about 100 hours per apprentice per year. And that includes that one-to-one coaching, so all the normal stuff that you would do as a people manager, but also adding on to that, liaising with the study provider, really understanding the apprenticeship, as you mentioned at the beginning, Rob, and getting people through, the gateways,
Yep.
etc. And also they mentioned about marking some of the portfolios, and I don't know to what extent that is a part of this particular apprenticeship, but it's something that I hadn't really thought about before, that they're actually going through the portfolio and marking that as part of their responsibility. So they put it as approximately 100 hours per apprentice.
Okay. No, that's really helpful, Georgine. Marking a portfolio, that's a bit weird. Yeah, they won't be doing that on this program in terms of marking, but they do need to be aware of what that learner is doing, and there might be what's usually validation of and a manager sort of what you say, a testimony or saying yes, we validate that learner has done that. So that may be what that manager was referring to, possibly. But thank you, Georgine. That's really helpful. What really helps is having those business champions. You need those line managers who really believe in maybe have had their similar experiences themselves. So choosing the line managers beginning who are committed and really want to support that learning is really important. Right, Jess, we'll hand back to you if that's okay. Next steps.
Thank you so much. So, probably wondering what happens now. And so, what we want is for firms to register their interests by the 30th of November. If that's early December, then that's quite okay. But hopefully, that you have the information. We don't necessarily need a firm commitment. We just need a rough indication of the numbers so we can understand the number of positions that we're working towards. We would like, given the information that you've received, to be able to identify a suitable team and a line manager that you could have to support the apprentices in the program. We would also like you to identify a mentor for the apprentices. This is really key in the apprenticeship journey in ensuring that that young talent is rooted in the firm and knows who to go to for maybe some more of those informal questions and so on. So, as we mentioned, in March 2026, that is when the government guidelines will be finalised. So, that's when we'll be ready to launch. And so, in that same time period, we want to be able to determine the exact number of firms and apprentice opportunities that we have. So, whilst we're advertising, we know how many roles need to be filled. In terms of the timeline, so just a longer term timeline, might be good for me to just reiterate the recruitment point as well. Like, we understand that firms have their own recruitment processes, and that's okay. We're going to allow the space for both to happen. So whilst we're going to partner with organizations such as Gain, who have an awesome imprint in the industry already, we will still allow you to do your own recruitment in terms of advertising on your website or all the channels that you previously existed have. So the idea is that we're going to maximize the number of young talent who can access these roles. And so if I go back to the timeline, in January, February is when we really need to have specific ideas about, okay, this is the type of apprentice that we're going to recruit into this specific team area. So as was mentioned previously, we will share those skills with you, which will enable you to go and speak to those different investment teams and understand where exactly those apprentices could fit in, because we agree that's very, very important. As soon as the government guidelines have been finalised, we will open applications and we will then head into the CV screening, head into sharing the different candidates with the firm so you can complete your own recruitment processes. We know that a lot of you may have telephone interviews, you may have certain exams that you might want to do. We're allowing you to have that space to do that as well. And then, as was mentioned as well, we're going to have some training for the line managers to ensure that the apprentices are onboarded well and that they start as they mean to go in. And then in Q3, the apprenticeships will begin and we'll have our program of events go on as mentioned. If you have any questions in the meantime, please don't hesitate to reach out for me. We also have a few more minutes if anyone else has any questions that they'd like to ask either the DP or Fitch as well.
Can I ask a quick question? This has been super helpful, so thank you. Trying to navigate apprenticeships across Edinburgh and also England is not easy. So thank you. A quick question around if there were a team that were out with the investment area that was interested, do you also partner on other pathways, for example, marketing or digital? Should this be something that we were interested in the future?
Go on, Jess, do you want to start? I can chip in as well.
I was going to say, so for this, we're specifically looking at this pilot year. So for now in the pilot year, we're focusing on those front office pathways. But what this looks like in the future is, of course, might be slightly different. So when we're talking about this pilot year, which is what we're starting off with right now and focusing on those front office type of pathways into the investment and savings industry.
But it could be potentially scope maybe in the future for more, do you think?
So yeah, we don't know what it looks like yet, but in the future, the program could look slightly different. But for now, in this pilot year, we want to focus it on those front office pathways.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Faye, I was just going to say, in terms of this whole strategic aim here with the diversity project and the partnership is to try and get that new talent coming into front office roles. That's real focus. But yeah, once that's up and running, then we can see where it can go next.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Faye. And Becky, yeah, right. What does a levy cover? So it is the so it covers the training, the professional qualification, exam fees for the first attempt, the endpoint assessment. What it doesn't cover is the salary for the apprentice, as you said, the employment-related costs. Yeah, the levy is very much for their development, but yeah, it doesn't cover the employment-related costs. Okay, thanks, Becky.
Another question. Any other questions before we head off? Okay, as I said before, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time. We will be in touch with some of those documents that will help you move you on to the next stage of registering. And of course, we will share a registration link with you as well that you complete when you're happy to move along with our apprenticeship program. Have a wonderful rest of the day to everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Thank you all.
everyone.
That was great.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.